Hi, I'm Rival. Welcome YouTube and the Summoner School subreddit to my first webcast. In this episode, I'll be breaking down the most asked questions about climbing in ranked by an illustrious figure in the League of Legends educational space, Coach Curtis. Curtis is a multi-season challenger that specializes in champion guides on YouTube, game theory, and solo queue climbing. His channel and resources will of course be linked in the description below. I've got him on the call today to discuss a few questions from the Summoner School subreddit and share with me the techniques he used to overcome any challenges he had while climbing and learning the game. With a bit of video preface out of the way, I want to welcome Curtis to the channel. Welcome, man.
G'day. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time you've given me today. So before we cover the questions given us to the subreddit, I want to give the audience a bit more of an insight to you as a player and as a person. So we'll just start off with some introductory questions if you're sweet with that.
Yeah, sure, man.
Cool. So what season did you start playing League of Legends?
Season 1, but I only played normal game. I played one ranked game in season 1.
Yeah, okay, sweet. It was not that competitive back then though, was it? It was like completely...
No, not really. A bit of a casual game. I played by myself and I just played a lot of normal games and I was too scared to go into ranked. So I played I think I played some ridiculous amount of bot games and a lot of normal games.
Yeah, nice. And that was when NA was the only server, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah. I played in NA from season 1, 2, and 3 and then I swapped to OS, I believe it was season 4.
Yeah, sweet. Cool. And what rank have you peaked at the moment?
This season, or you mean ever?
Just ever. Ever, yeah.
Ever? I got rank 1 in season... I think it was like season 6 or 7?
Damn, nice.
I think it's season 6, like it was rank 1, but LP-wise, I think it must have been last season. I think I peaked 1,050 LP last season.
Damn.
I think I scraped top 10. I was like top 10 last season.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sweet. That's really impressive. Over 1,000 LP is obviously a goal that pretty much everybody has. So yeah. Kudos to that. Great work. What other games do you enjoy outside League of Legends?
I don't really get time to play any of the games. I'm very busy, but if I did have time, probably PUBG or something like that. I try to get off the computer in my spare time, and if I do play games, I play PlayStation.
Yep.
PlayStation 5, and I'll play some casual games like Sackboy or something like that.
Yeah, sweet. And what's your favorite childhood game? What's it like for me, for example, is like Legend of Zelda. What's something you always kind of fall back to, or you get kind of excited when you see that single player release at EA every game?
I was a massive Counter-Strike player. I love Counter-Strike. I used to play 1.6 and Counter-Strike Source. So Counter-Strike is my childhood.
Yeah, awesome. Big FPS fan. That's lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah, sweet. Cool. And what is your favorite champion out of everything?
I would say of all time, it's hard to say. It's probably either Ori or Cassio or Twist of Fate. Probably Cassiopeia.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll say Cassiopeia.
Yeah, sweet. Is that from like a design perspective or a gameplay perspective, or like do you just enjoy playing the champ? Like she's just heaps of fun, or like something you particularly
I think she's really well designed. She has very specific strengths. And that's what I like about a champ. I like a champ that you know what it's designed to do. And you know why it's picked and when it should be picked, and it has outplay potential and it has very high skill cap. So that's why I like Cassio.
Yeah, Cassie's, and it's like, honestly, I pretty much only play bruisers, and that champion is the absolute bane of my existence. It's so hard to play against a Cassio. Man.
I can imagine.
Especially good ones too. Like,
yeah.
She's one of those champs you play against in lane, and she feels like obviously casters early are pretty weak, and then you try to fight her and she's got Conqueror, and you just get robbed even 3-6.
Autos and ease, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, dude. This is one I'm gonna ask to basically everybody. If you had to remove one champion from the game, who would it be?
Yuumi, instantly.
I honestly, I reckon that's probably the most popular answer. I think I've watched a bunch of like LCS and LEC content, and that's always like the most picked answer. Yeah,
I'd say Yuumi, but very close second is Vlad. I think Vlad is kind of broken by concept. Like if you actually think about Vlad healing through doing damage, I don't think that's a very healthy kit to have. I think they need to completely like obliterate that as a concept.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
It's so hard to balance.
Yeah, no, I totally actually understand where you're coming from, because it's kind of that point where if he's too weak, doesn't really do anything. If he's too strong, it's just the most oppressive thing ever, and there's a lot of reward for just playing safe, which in my opinion, safe styles of gameplay can be I don't even know if I'd say healthy, but they reward kind of like a pretty passive and boring playstyle, which from a money-making perspective from the company is not obviously good because they want to encourage fun and stuff.
I think with Vlad specifically though, they didn't know what they were doing back then. Like when Vlad was released, I don't think they really understood how big the game would get. And obviously they don't want to remove a champ from the game because people love the champ and they probably have a unique fan base that plays the champ.
Yeah.
So I think if Vlad would nowhere ever be released from, you know, if we're talking season 5 onwards or something like that, like it was just released at a time where they didn't know what the hell they were doing.
Yeah, that's
what I think.
He's
anyway.
got such a cool, like, he fits very well into the roster of champions because his thematic is so strong. So obviously we have a vampire and his whole theme and skins are amazing. So no, I do think now that you mention it, I've never thought about it before, but a rework would definitely be on the cards for a champion like Vlad.
Yeah, they need to do a full rework.
Absolutely agree. No, good take. I like that. So what do you do outside League? Any other passions or hobbies? Like obviously you said you try to jump off your PC. This is obviously a job, but whenever you can, you get outside, go to any sports?
Gym. I'm pretty into gym. I like reading. Basically gym and reading and just spending time with the missus.
Yeah, nice. Yep, that's pretty much sums me up as well, to be honest. Yeah, absolutely. Nice, man. And I really love this question, and it's probably one that's going to be the most relevant to what we talk about today. But because everyone has different perspectives, and I feel like this is probably the one question that every League player is looking for the magic. I feel like Magic Felix specifically has just got this question on lock. What do you do to break or prevent tilt? So as I said, I really like this question because everyone has a different way around it. Everyone has a different mentality and perspective towards the game, which obviously links into different coping mechanisms when it comes to tilt. What's something that you've found success in doing, getting over really hard peaks, like whether that's a loss streak or someone flaming you in game or just something not working? Like what do you employ? Yeah,
look, I answer this question in kind of 2 parts, and I'll try and keep it very simple. I think when we talk about tilt, let's actually use like a real life example, right? Let's say you're driving to work, right? And there's some, you know, crazy person on the street or like in a car, and some hooligan, and then they swerve in front of you and then you beep them. And then instead of them, you know, think, my bad, they get out of the car and they start to yell at you, right?
That's all
that person, right? Well, that person, you got to empathize because there's no way that guy has had a really great day. Like that guy, a lot of things have happened in that person's life up until that point for them to kind of snap. And in a way, I believe tilt is the culmination of a lot of other things up until that point. It's the culmination of not really having a process or an approach to getting better at the game. It's the culmination of not being lost in your journey and not really knowing what to focus on. It's the culmination of not really understanding how you're contributing to your games and the outcome of games. It's kind of like the end result of everything, I believe. Yeah. So I think when it comes to dealing with, I mean, at least preventing tilt, which is actually, in my opinion, the most important thing, kind of like injuries. I know you're into the gym. It's kind of like with injury prevention. Let's not get to the point where you've broke your spine. Let's actually make sure you're doing your form right and you're not overtraining and like all these other things. It's usually the injury is the culmination of many other things.
Yep. No, I totally agree. That's and as I said before, like you obviously have some really good life experience and a lot of experience on the game, which can link you into having a really good perception on tilt and the way to deal with tilt, which I think a lot of newer players, especially ones that haven't played MOBAs before, can learn from. I think
Well, I think that's a huge part of it. And just to quickly add on to that, the most pragmatic thing I would possibly recommend is if you have a rough game, literally get off the PC, go grab a drink of water, take a few deep breaths, walk around your house or whatever, go outside if you have a backyard, and then come back. When I actually, funnily enough, really true story, when I got the highest, I mean, not the highest LP, but when I got rank 1, I think it was like season 6 or something, what I used to go out, because I was at home at the time, I used to live with my parents, I was only young, I used to do skipping in between my games. So I would play, and then I would go outside, and then I'll do like some skips until I mess up, and then I'll go back inside and play again.
I really like that though, because as someone, you said before, you participate in the gym and you have a very balanced lifestyle. I love that because completely breaking your focus, so breaking the pattern, breaking the rhythm, and focusing on something else, like literally another goal, and obviously getting oxygen flowing, your blood pumping, is something to really reset your hormones. And someone who's obviously into the gym and stuff, you're very aware of the way that physical activity is going to interact with your mental. I say literally the exact same thing. Like if you have a bad game, playing on is just not, you're not playing at your peak. And if you really want to climb and you're playing with discipline, that's just not the way to go about it.
Body and mind are connected, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And all the hormones build up and because in traditional sport, if you tilt, or you get angry, you get frustrated, you can let it out. Like you can tackle someone, or you can sprint harder, or you can punch harder. Like we have an outlet in League. If you get frustrated, you don't have the physical outlet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you can open all chat, but that's very counterproductive to the goal.
That's for sure.
Yeah, no, that's really good, man. Good stuff. Good stuff. Perfect. All right. So with some introductory questions out of the way, we're going to jump into, these are just 7 questions that I've just taken out. I didn't necessarily take the most upvoted ones, but the ones I found that could resonate the most with the general player base. So number 1, we have asked from Arceus Azure. He asked, what are some steps you can take to have a bigger impact if you find yourself coming out ahead in lane most of the time? I find that I win lane pretty often, but in trying to impact the map, I feel I may overforce sometimes and throw a lead.
Yeah, it's a very common, specifically I would say with Platinum players, that's a very common problem. I'd say 2 things. Number 1, getting better at translating leads it's a long-term game. And what I mean by that is, in League, when you're trying to win a game, it's kind of like a puzzle. And it's a different puzzle every single time, and it's a skill in itself. So what I always recommend to my clients is have a go, like have a hypothesis about how you want to win this game in the lull states. And what I mean by that, when you're coming out of base and say it's 15 minutes in, you're 4-0, think to yourself, press tab, look at who's strong, who's fed, what the next objective is, whatever it is, and say to yourself, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to play towards my bot side. I want to get that dragon, and then I want to get into the side, and incrementally as the game goes on, every single lull state, have a crack is what I say. Have a hypothesis. Now, this might be completely wrong in the moment. It could be the wrong thing to do. That's okay. We can look at that in the review, but have a hypothesis. And the reason this is very important is because when you're getting into the review, and say you incrementally lose that game by not making a single pivotal, like a big decision, so you just slowly die out, there's very little to learn from, because you're always going to be able to blame all the other people in the game for making that decision, or making those decisions, right?
Like nullifying.
So make a decision. It doesn't matter how wrong it is. That's the first thing. And number 2, very simply, have a hypothesis about your win condition. What I mean by that is, think about who on your team is strong. So generally, if you're ahead, there's someone else on the team that is either even or even ahead themselves.
Yep.
So identify the members on your team that you want to play around. Say, okay, my bot lane, they're actually doing pretty good. They seem like a good secondary win condition. I'm going to now shove and move and hover them and try and break bot tower. Or maybe my jungler's really ahead, and I want to work with my jungler maybe to complement him. If my jungler goes invade, I'm going to hover that side and complement on that invade. If they start dragon, I'm going to hover them and make sure we get dragon. If they want to die bot, I'm going to help them die bot.
Yep.
Identify the members on the team that you want to play around and just facilitate them, or let them facilitate you. And then again, if you're the carry, you believe you're the carry, say what you need from the team. If it's like, if you're playing Kiana and you're in the side lane and you want to play for side split or whatever, call for hover from your jungler, or ping assistance on the bot side quadrant, or the side that you're on, so that they can hover you and you get vision control of that side.
Yep.
So again, this all ties into you having a hypothesis, having a go, and then taking a look after objectively. What did you get for the decision that you made? What bang for your buck did you get? When you made this call, what did you get from it? What didn't you get from it? And then kind of go from there.
Yep. No, it's like obviously a very comprehensive answer and a lot to take away. I really, really liked the point. So you have a lot of theory about the way that solo queue works from a coding perspective behind the game, and obviously making the player want to keep playing, etc., etc. Your principles behind auto wins, auto losses, and all that kind of thing, which I absolutely love. And I've watched this content before, literally before I even met you, and it's really good stuff. Guys, I really encourage you to go watch it if you want another perspective on climbing in ranked and the way that ranked actually works. Curtis's stuff has been very, it was a hypothesis to start with, but it's actually been backed by a lot of evidence. Essentially, the way that it works, Curtis talks about games that are auto won and auto lost, and a lot of those games that are, then there's ones that are in the balance. Ones that are in the balance are ones that are definitely very winnable. And in this statement that he's just spoken about, he talks about playing around a complementary factor in the game. So you have to complement another player. If there's no complementaries, it's an auto loss game essentially. Yeah, you're going to have some very rare 1v9s where you just flash in and kill all 5 players, but it's an outlier. It's not going to happen that often. I love that take. I'm going to just break down a little bit from a top laner's perspective. Because I would say my experience and my role is a little bit more volatile than a lot of other ones. Like if we make one mistake, or if we make one bad flash, we're out of the game. Like we waste our flash badly. One thing that I've had coaching from Thean, an Oceanic Pro, and he said, play around your spikes. So play around level 11, level 16, and your item spikes. So I'm a Riven player. I play around Gore Drinker very heavily. If I have Gore Drinker before anybody, I'm going to go and try and skirmish. That's just the way it goes. You try to control a skirmish that way, or as Curtis said before, open up your tab menu, see who's fed, see who's got resources. Your job, you're 1v1 with that person. Your job is to shut them down. You kill them, you're essentially going to win the next skirmish, or you're going to get a shutdown and get yourself even further ahead. If you know they don't have flash, you are timing that in your head. And if you're not, that's a skill to develop. If you don't do it, that's a skill to develop. If I know enemy Xayah is 7-0 and I'm 3-0, but I can kill the Xayah still, and I have flash, I'm walking bot and I'm going to look to flash on her as soon as she overextends. Something like that is a way to shove your lead down that Xayah's throat and kind of get her off the map. Open up the bot lane, just give some resources if you can. And when you have flash up again, look to fight again. You don't have to force. Everyone's a human. You might feel like the enemy is just going to run over you, but the amount of games I've won by waiting for mistakes, waiting for the enemy to dive me under my inhib towers, and then just getting a wipe, getting Baron, whatever. They made a mistake, you capitalize off it. No player is perfect. It happens even in Korean solo queue. Watch for mistakes and capitalize off them. And as Curtis said, complementary play. So play around another member of a team who's willing to cooperate and someone else who's got a lead on the map. It's going to make your job a lot
Last thing
easier.
I will add onto that is that a big mistake I see people with translating leads is that like you said, they force plays, but they also stop farming. It's very important that you keep on farming. Like the way to secure most wins if you're ahead is continuing to farm and even take enemy jungle camps. Something that you can is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've made a Reddit post pretty recently about adopting a very consistent play style. And the cornerstone of consistency is farming, because it's the only way that is guaranteed income every single game through experience and through gold. It's the easiest way to get experience on yourself, and obviously items, which are literally the ways to the enemy nexus. Farming is the main way through that. Every game, you're not going to go 10-0. Sometimes you might feed, but farm's always going to come down your lane. You're always going to be able to farm. So when you get ahead, maintain your level leads by sticking on side. And again, as Curtis said, choking the enemy out of their own jungle. So if I'm a 2-0, 3-0 Riven, the enemy jungler is not going to be trying to fight me. The enemy top lane is probably 0-3. I can go and take the whole top side of the map and start putting pressure around and choking them out of the map. Absolutely correct. I love that answer. Very, very good. Is there anything else you want to add before we go on the next one?
Yeah, the last thing I will add is, remember, like, just because you're ahead doesn't mean you're gonna, like you said, you're not gonna 1v9 carry. I hate that mindset, like the 1v9 toxic carry mindset. Like, that's why I talk about on my podcast, the Broken by Concept podcast, is like, one of the narratives that people have is, if I'm ahead, I have to, it's me versus everyone else in the game. Like, actually, if you break down that sentence, it's 1v9, not even 1v4. It's like me and my team is actually making me get worse. And the enemy team is all out to get me. And if you really break that down, like, that's not really how it works. You just need to do your job. And I think that a lot of people, like that narrative really makes it hard for them to stay poised in a game. And like you said, you just got to do your job. And remember, helping your team is a way to win the game. Like you said, as Riven, if you're pushing up and you're dominating your opponent, you're going to get better quality vision. You can now chuck a ward on like their top side quadrant or whatever, and you can spot out their jungler. If you're seeing their jungler, say you solo killed your opponent twice, and then you spot their jungler, you're not helping just you. You're helping everyone on the map. You're helping the mid laner. Now they see the jungler, then your jungler now has information, and maybe they can counter gank something or take an objective on the other side, and your bot lane can now play however they want because they know the jungler's not there. So by giving information to the rest of your team, you're not only helping you, you're helping everyone else. So I always say to my clients, how do we make the game as easy as possible for our team to win? And vision is a great way to do that.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. And honestly, it ties in with a theory that I'm pretty heavily behind, and something that I've kind of developed just through a lot of thinking about the game, and something that I talk to a lot of, again, I have a few clients myself, is the butterfly effect within League of Legends. So for example, I've got that lead as a Riven. I placed a ward topside. That one ward could stop the jungler getting a double kill bot. You know what I mean? So in terms of the butterfly effect, I've pushed my lead into that one ward. That one ward has prevented a double kill bot, which prevents their tower getting taken, which prevents Dragon getting taken, which prevents Soul getting taken, which prevents the game being lost. That one ward. So when you think about the butterfly effect in terms of League of Legends, your one micro action that you don't actually see a direct consequence from could directly impact the rest of the game, and you wouldn't even know. It's just about nailing those fundamentals. So like, as you said, warding, that sort of stuff can really, and like choking the enemy out of the top side of the map. Like you taking the enemy jungler's golems could stop them from getting that serrated Dirk, which killed your AD carry on like less than 100 health, something like that. The butterfly effect is like very prevalent, which ties into exactly like the theory that you just covered. So yeah, couldn't agree more really. Moving on, we have number 2 by Sheepy Darkness, and he asks, a lot of people who have good game fundamentals, people in brackets, people who are challenger for multiple seasons, close brackets, will role swap and start on a new account, reach Master/D2 on roles they're newer to fairly quickly. I think that's worded wrong, but to newer, but he reaches the rank fairly quickly, despite not having extensive matchup knowledge. What is it exactly, or some things that should be looked out for that are integral to this success other than good mechanics and mental?
Yeah, good question. I mean, so I made a video kind of talking about this called Your League Journey. And basically, everyone has their own unique league journey. And what I mean by that is, let's take what he mentioned as let's say Tyler 1. Let's just use Tyler 1 as a common example, right?
Yep.
Tyler 1's been playing the game for an extremely long time. Now, if we actually break down his journey, he's played the game for a very long time. And he's played the game not a normal amount, has he? He's a content creator and he streams. And he's been playing thousands upon thousands upon thousands of games on stream, in ranked, for years.
Yep.
Right? Now, that guy, he has a very, very unique league experience. He's experienced many, many, many things. And he was also an extremely competitive individual at a personal level. He's extremely mentally resilient and mentally. He has a lot of self-belief and a growth mindset, I would believe. I would think so anyway. And so you remember when he's picking up another role, it's not like he's picking it up from scratch. He has so much intuitive game sense and so much knowledge that, sure, you might not know all the particular matchups and things like that, but game sense alone and game knowledge alone and micro alone is going to carry you most of the way there.
Yep.
Because you've played the game for so long and your league journey is so extensive, it doesn't even matter. An analogy that might help people describe this is it's very similar to elite athletes swapping sports. As elite athletes can actually swap sports, right? I mean, the most obvious one that everyone knows, like Michael Jordan going from NBA to Major League Baseball. He didn't go to the Major League in baseball, but he played at, I think, division below.
Yep.
And was quite successful and was on track to potentially make the top league.
Yep.
When that's the equivalent, right, of potentially Diamond versus Challenger in other
yep.
sports. He could probably have done that in many, many other sports. There's other athletes in many sports that could do that. We see that all the time in Australia and AFL go to rugby league or rugby league to NFL. We've had people in the NRL go to the NFL in America. So the analogy I'm making here is that if you have good fundamentals of the game in general, you understand how the game works, it can extend to nearly every role in the game regardless. When you get to that level, but that's not what everyone can do. That's a very particular breed of player that has a very extensive background.
Yep.
Right? So when you see Magic Felix, I think Magic Felix was the one that did that, and like he got challenged in multiple roles, and Tyler won the same thing. These are outliers among outliers. You got to realize that. Like like when people say challenger, like we're already talking 0.00 some percent.
Yeah.
These are already the best gamers, and then they played the game for an incredibly long time. So you got to remember that. So I don't really like my response to this is like there's very little we can take away from that. The average person, there's not really much they can take away from that. Is that they just have an immense amount of game sense.
Yeah, no, like the athlete analogy I think is amazing because coming down from training into employing, I would almost say, honestly, like, and I think you said this, just the fundamentals, because there's only so much you can do before you start translating the fundamentals into being able to play the role proficiently. So for a top laner, I'd probably go to mid for my next one and just using my wave management, my farming, which is obviously stuff that you have to have down pat for top. I can learn the mid lane matchups through. You can watch all the YouTube guides you want on matchups, but you're still not going to have it without that experience. As you said, T1, well, Tyler 1 has played against like LeBlanc a million times, even though he's an ADC player. You know what I mean? Like, so when he goes mid lane, he's obviously going to have an understanding of the champion's relative, his windows, the champion's relative like power budget, like what he has to do.
You know everything by a feel. Like you will
100%.
know it all by a feel. Like you've seen it so many times. You know roughly what LeBlanc's W cooldown is like and E range because you've versed it thousands of games across 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It is a really hard question to answer, as you said, but honestly, it really does. And I think the most solid or like complete answer you can give is just that experience and translate. It's really going to come down to those thousands of hours if you're able to do it. I don't know any player that's played to like Challenger and then gotten it on another role that hasn't played the game like for longer than, like 2 seasons, let's say. Like they've been playing it since its conception. Magic Felix has been around since the dawn of League. T1's been around since the dawn of League. These guys, as you said, are outliers. I just don't, it's pretty hard to do.
Yes. And I would say that, I would actually say it's less so about fundamentals. Like, I actually think Tyler 1 doesn't have that great fundamentals, funnily enough.
Okay.
Even though, I've watched him play a lot. Like, he wins a very particular way. But again, like you said, his game sense is incredible. He knows what all the champions do. He doesn't win via good fundamentals. That's not the way T1 plays. He has a very, and I made a video on T1. He has a very particular way of winning. And it's not a fundamental way of what I would call a fundamental way of winning. So yeah, I'd say like fundamentals and this argument, this topic, then they're kind of They're like they don't really match.
Yeah, okay. So you would say if your playstyle is more efficient at winning games than practicing fundamentals. So maybe like so when you think about fundamentals, you're thinking like 8 CS per minute, low deaths, good warding, like whatever.
Yeah. And remember, like I say this to my clients, there's many ways to kill a Nexus. Okay. Every game of League, there's not. This is why I also say like, whenever I say something, I don't mean that it's a fact. I don't say objectively this is the one answer to this solution in the game. Like this is my take on how to win this game. Like I believe that this is the win condition. This is what I would do if I were in this game. But I don't believe that's necessarily the only way to win the game. So in League, based off your interpretation of your champ's identity, based off your experiences and how you like to play in your rank, in your server, in this game, given the players' tendencies, you're going to have your own way to win the game. Now, Tyler One and players like Magic Felix, even if you watch Magic Felix, they win a very particular way. They like to play the game a very particular way. They are very good at killing the Nexus, and they will kill the Nexus a very unique way. And I wouldn't say it's a fundamental way.
Yeah, okay. No, I like that. It's a really good perspective, and I also want to add into that as well. Obviously, League of Legends is probably one of, if not the most volatile and ever-changing games that there is, regardless of how good. Like, you've seen players go from Challenger/Rank 1 down to, like, Diamond 4 because the game just changes so much and they can't adapt their playstyles. Obviously, Magic Felix and Tyler One, for example, have gone through all of these changes and still been adaptive players up to, like, the highest level. And again, that could probably fall back to their experience, right? Like, that's... just that they've played the game that much. Honestly, they can just probably, they just the outliers, the people that can just do that kind of thing. Yeah, that's no, good, really good. I like that perspective. That's really, really good. Cool. Number 3 from Traditional Lemon, we have, what do you think is the most common problem in higher elo students/players you've observed between these 4 categories: mechanics, game knowledge, attention/awareness, or mental/emotions?
So the categories were micro.
Yeah, mechanics, game knowledge, awareness, or mental. Okay,
and this is in high elo students, so we're talking diamond students.
Yeah, let's go like D4. Yeah, let's fixate on 2 points. Let's fixate on D4 and master, because I feel like there's a big clamp between master and 300 LP, and then D4 and D1. I would say, or D4,
they're
D2,
massive.
D2.
Yeah, I say around D2. So I usually think like D2 is a big break point for a lot of people, and then D2 to master is like, if I were to break that up, it's like D4 to D2, then D2 to master, and then master to around 300 LP, and then
I agree,
300 LP, just like that.
Definitely.
So I guess we'll start with the D4 and that like diamond. I would say, I mean, look, it's very difficult to kind of extrapolate because I think everyone, tying back to the last question, everyone has their own league journey. I would say overall, though, in most of my diamond clients, game knowledge and micro. Game knowledge and micro, I say in diamond a lot. I don't think awareness, though, is game knowledge in a way.
Yeah, that's true.
So they're kind of like one of the same, like because. Sure, I guess you can be aware but not know what to look for. But most of the time, an aware person is very inquisitive and curious, and they will kind of know what to look for. I've never really met someone that is aware but doesn't know what to look for. So I think it'd be better just to kind of lump them together as like an aware player, like awareness and game knowledge.
Yeah, I mean,
most people in Diamond, I'll say most, sorry to interrupt, but most people in Diamond, I would say like, okay, in Diamond, I would categorize it into they have poor matchup understanding and they don't get into the details. So I get a lot of diamond players where they come to me and then they have decent champ mastery. They have a good basic fundamental understanding of the game. They have like everything's just average, right? Decent. But then there's they're not able to get specific about matchups or they're not able to get specific about how to deal with a specific jungler or a jungle path, or they're not able to break down like a specific part of like a mid game. Like they're good across the board. And the reason this is the case generally is that most people get to diamond by spamming games and having a lot of champ mastery. It's very rare that you'll get a client in Diamond that is actually very smart about the game, but that just doesn't have the champ mastery or something like that. Generally, they spammed games. They have a lot of champ mastery and they have a lot of intuition, but they don't really know how to take it to the next level. They don't understand the details. Yeah, the final details.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of awareness, but a combination of game knowledge and a combination of micro. It's usually a combination of everything, just weighted differently depending on the client.
Yeah, no,
I would say.
Those finer details, as you touched on before, I think that's a really good point, because often when I talk to like a pro top laner about a certain matchup or something like that, he'll literally say to me like, and this is the sort of stuff that people fixate on, and coaches and pro players and the details. Like he'll literally say, no, you've entered by taking inspiration here. You have to take bone plating because level 3, this is going to happen. This is literally the sort of stuff you get into. And this is the higher level. Like if you want to climb, pay attention to this sort of stuff. Go watch VODs. Why did he take this? How do you utilize the rune? That's one aspect of details. There could be, no, you can't push in because this happens in the matchup. Like for example, I'm just going to throw Riven and Renekton, obviously. Level 1, you can't let Renekton on the wave because you'll generate Fury. Renekton wins the matchup by... so you can't even leash. That's a detail. You can't leash because Renekton will generate Fury. He'll slow push you into level 3 dive. That's just a detail that you have to understand and realize when you're playing the matchup. That is one specific matchup in one specific instance. So imagine how many there are across the board, like when it comes to just roles and lanes and matchups and like everything. There's so many details in this game. Definitely. It's so deep.
I would add on to that. Most people in Diamond, they can kind of know something intuitively, but they won't know why. So a common thing I'll say is like, okay, walk me through what did you want to do here, and they'll say, I like shoving, and I say why, and they won't really be able to answer, and that's okay. But I think in Diamond, if you want to become more of a consistent player, because I think a lot of Diamond and low Master Tier players are just inconsistent. They're very inconsistent. That's like when I verse a Master Tier player, they can beat me in a specific area, but they're so goddamn inconsistent that like they're gonna slip up at some point.
Yeah.
So I think that like the reason these inconsistencies occur, and also because inconsistent is the best term to describe Diamond all the way to Master. The reason this is the case is because they might know something intuitively, but if you don't understand why that thing is the case, then it's hard for you to replicate. So a perfect example is like, okay, they might play one game, say they're playing, we'll use top, you're a top laner, they might play a matchup a particular way, and let's say they win it. But if the enemy jungler was something aggressively, they would lose it. You know what I mean? So it's like, if the enemy jungler actually path topside, he would die. But in this game specifically, he just got lucky. He didn't track the enemy jungle. He just got lucky that the jungle pathed down, and that the jungle, or maybe the jungler pathed top, but like chose to gank mid instead, and he got away with it. And so the time where he wins it, what is he going to do? He's going to say, oh, I'm the best, give himself a pat in the back and say, I'm the fucking best, right?
Yeah.
But the time where he does it poorly, he's not going to get into the details and actually be like why it didn't work, because in the past he thought it worked. Oh, I just got unlucky this time. It's okay. I'll win it next time.
Yeah.
They don't get specific as why things work and why things don't work. So Diamond to Master is where I try to get clients to start by being very curious and being inquisitive and dropping their ego and start asking why things happen or aren't happening. And then we, again, like you said, we just got to start getting into the details over and over and over and over again, because League is a game of a lot of small, boring, non-sexy things. It's not you don't win. Like when people think of, like the average Platinum player thinks of a Master Tier player, or even a D4 player thinks of a Master Tier player, they think, oh my god, they're going to outplay me, they're in Master Tier, they're so good. Well, usually that's not the case. Usually it's like a lot of, they understand a lot of little things. They might understand how to play their levels 1 to 3 better, or they might understand one or two or three things better than you. And it just seems like it's a massive thing because you're under tower and you're losing trades at level 4, but you don't really know why. Yeah. But it might even be like one or two things.
No, definitely.
It's a lot of small, boring things.
No, that's so true. Like I actually really like the word unsexy used there. It's really good because so this is a kind of quote from a recent video that I did, and it's just on like tips to climb. But it was basically talking about like what differentiates a challenger from like even a gold player who can be really mechanically proficient. It's really weird to watch because the challenger all of a sudden they'll get a solo kill, but it's like, oh, like you're watching it and you're like, oh, but the person was just overextended. Like, it's no mistake the person was overextended without flash. You know, the challenger obviously set that up through micro, through wave management, like through micro adjustments to the wave, like whatever. And then all of a sudden, the other player's out of the game. He's 3 levels down. He's 100 CS down, like whatever. But the challenger literally didn't. He's not flash animation canceling. You know, like it's just their micro adjustments and those tiny little boring things that they've learned that really squeeze you when you're like a lower player and you don't know how to deal with it. And if you go back and watch, you probably won't even know really what happened, which is where a coach like yourself would really fall into play. Be like, oh, look, like you shoved in here for no reason, which means he can freeze on you, which means, you know, now you're on long lane, you get ganked, and then he's going to exert that into the rest of the lane. You know, essentially item lead, you're out of the game. Like something like that. The details, absolutely.
And there's a really great, on our podcast, someone left a comment which was like, talking about this, he said, if like a professional chess player or something, I think it was like a professional, I think it was chess. Like if a professional chess player versus someone that isn't professional, but also maybe is like just a bit of an average player, the chess player can look like they're winning up until a point where they're not, like just instantaneously. Like, so, and it's because they don't understand that they're just being set up from the get-go. I think it was something like that, or the analogy, was like, I think it was like the player versing them. They're playing incredibly over their limits, and they will win up until they lose. Like so like for example, say some guy is like constantly playing aggressively in the challenger's face. The challenger player is probably thinking, how can you do this? You have no information about where the enemy jungle is. So sure, that guy might be winning temporarily for the next minute 30 seconds, and until he dies, and then it just like turns.
Yeah, that's so true.
You know?
Like even like a really small like anecdotal like little example, let's say, of that is like a cheetah recall. They set you up from the get-go. Might look like level 1, they're just like, you know, just last hitting, just farming. You don't understand what's going to come of that cheetah recall. That's literally like they're going to freeze on you with an item advantage and you're going to get killed with ignite. You know what I mean? Like especially in a meta with no TP, understanding the wave mechanics like cheetah recalls and stuff, those micro things where you're being set up from the get-go, as you said, like so important. That kind of stuff's going to win you games, win you lanes, win you games, everything. Like it's just, I think it was even, I would even attest to, and reinforcing what you said before between the diamond and master kind of elo, when I first got there and started climbing towards D1 and then into my early master, that was when I started doing like 1v1s with friends and with other like higher up players. Like I'd run back a matchup and be like, I really struggle with this matchup. Can you lock this in and we'll go over this really quickly. And I need to understand how this happened. That's when I started doing the boring shit like that. And that's where I really noticed my like, it was like a spike almost, you know? You have like these big spikes where you'll climb from like 2 divisions or a couple hundred LP and then you'll stop. And like same and same again. And you have to like realize those kind of like thresholds that you're surpassing through these like little bits of knowledge you're accruing over your time of the game, over your journey, you would say, you know, of your league journey, let's say. Yeah, definitely. No, really good. We jumped into that, dived into that a little bit, a little bit there. Number 4 from Liquid Deathman, and this also ties in with number 5 I have written down. Actually, I'll just cover these both really quickly. Is playing less better for climbing? And it also ties in with Dregnar's question, Drengar, which says, what would be the best amount of games to play best amount of games a day to play in order to improve 5 personal quality games, etc. ?
Again, it really depends on what your goal and ambitions are, how much spare time you have. What I would say really simply is you want to be getting the problem we're trying to solve here is how do you get as many high quality games in as possible, right? High quality, high intensity games.
Yep.
And I am a big believer in the 3-block mantra. I call it 3 blocks, where you play in blocks of 3. So you play, you review, you play, you review, you play, you review. A new process that I've been following, which is actually play, mini review, play, mini review, play, mini review, and then review those 3 games before my next block. However many of those 3 blocks you can get in while getting 8 hours sleep and getting exercise in, that is it. So if you have a full day, you can do 3 blocks pretty easily, right? You can 3 block, grab lunch, exercise, 3 block, break, 3 block. You could even do 4. And if you have a really, maybe one of those games is like a auto loss or like a really low quality game, you can add in a 4th and make it a 4 block. That's okay as well.
Yeah.
But I and you might ask, well, why 3? I believe 3 is a really good number because I think League, if you're playing with very high intensity, is absolutely draining. And any more than 3 games, if you're playing high intensity games and they're, 25, 30 minute plus games, you're mentally fatigued. And I don't believe that I don't think you can actually play at a high intensity for longer than like 2-ish hours, at a time, at a stretch. And everyone's different. Everyone is different. And then the number one thing people say to combat this is say, oh, but what about Tyler 1? Or what about this guy? What about this guy?
TF play.
Okay, right. I get that. And remember, tie it back to everyone's league journey. These are outliers. And a lot of people's process isn't replicable. It's what works for them, right? And maybe, right, if one of these players, if a mid beast did 3 blocks and didn't have the pressure of streaming, maybe he would be way better. We don't know, right? So you got to remember, it's everyone has their own league journey, and just because someone else does it doesn't mean it works for you. So that's that's kind of like what I would say.
Yeah, no, beautiful. I actually, the 3 block mantra, I've never heard of that before, but it makes total complete sense to me. I would say probably the thing I have the most success with is absolutely playing with a mind state of very like neutrality. So you're very like, your emotions are very set. You're not overly happy. You're not overly sad, because like one thing can just skew your emotions. So neutrality, you're thinking about the rules of the game. You're not playing with like over aggression or under aggression. You're playing like just to the rules of the game. Just farm well, just play with neutrals until you start to make capitalizations on enemy mistakes. And the number 2 thing is never more than 2 losses. Like that's just for me. Anyone can do more, but any more than 2 losses, I just feel like you're not playing optimally. Even if one's an auto loss, you're just not playing optimally. Things are going to build up. It's just going to accrue. Stress is going to accrue, like whatever. That's just personally for me. I don't know how you deal with losses, but I've always found that 2 losses for me, it calls for a break at least. Even if I won 4 games, 2 losses, I just feel like the 3rd game, it's got some ick. There might be a player that lost.
To jump on that, the reason I'm not a fan of that specifically, and again, this is just my opinion.
No, go ahead. Absolutely, I want to hear.
Think about the average person, right? The average person studies or works and has a full-time job. They come home, and let's say they do a 9 to 5, and then they only have 2 hours to play games. Most people can't afford to take a break after 2 games if they want to get games in, because there's a fine line between getting enough games in. Like sometimes you just got to get games in to get better, right?
Yeah, of course.
And I think that like the problem with the 2 losses, so I think for some people they just won't have enough time. They're not getting enough games in. That's why the 3-4 block is good. I think as well, if you were to end after 2, I think you're overemphasizing losses. Like if the pain is so much that after 2 losses you can't play a 3rd, I think that's already indicative of there's something already going wrong with your emotional regulation. In my opinion. So I think that like if that, for me anyway, the advice, if someone says, look, I can only play 2 games, I would say, okay, that's where you're at now. Let's like push it and let's get uncomfortable and let's play a 3rd. And then maybe we can have a chat about how we can better refresh after that 2nd one, because I just don't think you can play enough games otherwise.
Yeah, no, I like the expansion of that. I really do. And honestly, as you said before, like let's get uncomfortable. Something that I'm really dealing with in my journey as a player, and something that I really need to work on is, and I've realized in the cornerstone of me, kind of like my picture of a player that I would like to be, you know what I mean, is consistency. I want people to see Rival in their lobby and be like, oh, it's that Riven player that's going to go 20-0 or 0-20. You know what I mean? Like I want to be that player he's always, they look top and you're like, okay, he's like 250 CS at 27 minutes. Like he's in the game still, even if he's 0-1, like whatever. I want to be that cornerstone, and that all falls down to consistency, which means being able to play through your negative emotion. Even if you get ganked, even if you get dove, no typing, get back to the wave, get back to jungle camps, like start hitting, just getting gold on yourself. And the way to do that is, through consistency. It's something I realized. I watched Viper a lot, who was notorious for his 10 CS per minute Riven, and it's something that I wanted to emulate, and I kind of lost my way towards that goal, I guess. So I think that me being able to work through my 2 loss thing and just really focusing on the consistencies, and the ways to, as I said, you know, some games you're gonna get fed, some games you're not. The creeps are always gonna come down that lane. That consistency is always there, and something to anchor yourself on, you know, is a way to get yourself back in the game. Something
add on to this, that might help you as well, is like, you know, you're saying how we were talking about tilt, right, before. One thing that I really find helpful with dealing with frustration and tilt is just getting into the details, like in the review. Like the review, I'd say the review is the medicine. And a lot of the time when you get into review and you look at like what objectively happened, sure, you might be a little bit like beat up or a little bit like pissed at what happened. But a lot of the time when you can actually see what happens and why it happens, when you kind of brush away all the confusion and the mist and all that stuff, and you see it for what it is, it's just a mistake. It's just, oh, that makes sense. Now I know why I died here. Oh, if you actually drop your ego and say, oh, yeah, I did get Dover level 3. Why is that the case? What could I have done to prevent that? Like, that line of thought is going to make the sting of losing so much less because you're actively making sense of why it happened. And I'll say the other thing as well is if you're trying to, like, say you're trying to get really good quality CS numbers on your Riven, say that's your focus point.
Yep.
If you lose, but you come out of that game and you realize, oh, I actually didn't do my goal very well, like, you have something to look at, and that's going to center you. It's like, oh, great, I this isn't a wasted game, right? My bot could have just went 0-12, or my mid could have, went 0-10, whatever, but I still didn't do well on my learning objective, or the thing that I'm focusing on. And a lot of the time, that can keep you sane and on track for the next game.
No, and one thing I love what you just said there, and one thing I really want to pull this out for just the general player base is centering. So, like, centering obviously as a concept is just something to bring, like, anchoring. It's essentially like bringing yourself back to center, like Aurelia says, back to center, like reset, like something to kind of like rethink about, something that you need. So like next game, I'm like, I went 7 CS, whatever. I didn't get better. I didn't hit my goal. Something that lower elo players, I think as well, can implement to kind of like start to build up their fundamentals, let's say, is, as you said, just those goals per game. So, I died more than 3 times. My goal was to die under 3 times. Or, my CS was 6.5 like it normally is. It wasn't 7 like where I want to get to, like whatever. Something like those things can literally be centering aspects to go into like next game. So I love that word. I just love the phrase. Like the whole reset thing, I think, is a really big one. Yeah, I love that. Really, really good. Yeah, thanks for that as well. I really appreciate the feedback as well. Like the pushback there was like, it's really good because now you've given me something to think about. When I get to those 2 things, I'm going to be like, you know what? Like, fuck this. Curtis literally said, go past 2. Like, put yourself in an uncomfortable position. That's where you're going to get better. So, like, if I ever get to the 2 losses now, I'm going to be like, this is an area to work on. This is something to improve on. Yeah, I love that. Cool. Next question. Thank you. Next question is from Javine1. We've only got 2 more to go. I find myself in situations where I've fallen very behind and it feels like I can't even get into my own jungle. What are positive plays I can make in those situations to help turn the game back around?
The concept that I would talk about is losing gracefully. Basically, losing gracefully means how do I lose in a way that is going to kind of cushion the fall and make the game as easy as possible for my team to win. So don't view it in terms of like plays I need to make. View it in terms of sacrifices I need to make and plays that I don't need to make. And so I think that if you're getting behind, you're 0-2, 0-3, the game's not on you. That's not your game to play anymore. It's someone else's game. You're now backseat. Someone else is in the driver's seat. That game's out of your control now. So you're just there to allow someone else to carry you.
Yep.
And being carryable is a skill. And that's something that, a lot of us are bad at. I think I have days where I am not carryable. And that's on me. Right. And I make the game hard for my team. And I could win that game if I actually just stop being a sook and actually just take a few deep breaths and say, okay, look, this game's not mine. Let's just allow myself to get carried. And the biggest reason I would say people don't want to get carried is, again, the ego. But
the ego. Yep.
The ego gets in the way. But if you can, put that aside and really focus on getting the win and being a good teammate, a lot of the time you're going to win. And sometimes I said this a lot where, let's say you're a top laner, right? And your bot lane's fed. The enemy's trading sides of the map. So you're left on an island by yourself, right? Yep. They 3-stack or they 2-stack a wave and they're going to dive you. Mm-hmm. There's a very big difference between you foreseeing that like a minute before and then just leaving it and then taking like Raptors and Krugs and then like letting your jungler win through bot side. Because in that game is actually decided not by who makes the better dive, but also it's mainly who makes it harder to dive or who gives them less opportunities.
Yep. Yep,
right, so it's better for you to go down that 20 CS and then take 2 jungle camps and then let the other side, your bot side, dive them because they're usually not going to probably understand that they're getting traded off and probably just die.
Yep.
So that you're winning the game by not dying.
Yep. Yeah, well, I think that's like a big skill from probably even just like 80 carry supports and top laners is 50% of your job is being able to be carried. So it's literally like and it's the hardest job because you have to do the most with the least resources, right? You're not in the position where you're just one-shotting people. You're just watching your enemy top or enemy AD carry farm for free while you're sitting under your tower, just like bored as, waiting for the game to kind of explode. But like the thing that you touched on there is just like making the least mistakes and making it the hardest job for them to play the opposite side of the map. Your weak side, Just be weak side. Take a breath. You know, no counter ganks. Like whatever. Just play to your farm. Don't get dove.
Don't
like,
ask for ganks as well.
Oh,
if you're
dude.
behind and you're 0-2, don't spam ping for assistance. You want the opposite. You actually want your jungler to play away from you because your lane's not salvageable anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Your
You're in
lane's
2v1.
done.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, you're not the win condition. If you're begging for ganks and your jungler then goes top and then nothing happens, you've then just lost the game because now your jungler's not doing anything around the win condition and just showing on the map on the wrong side of the map. And then if your jungler shows then top and then your bot lane died to a gank, then the game's just done.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's actually really, really true. And like when you really dive into it even more, like the 2v2s auto lost, obviously, like enemy top so ahead. 2v2s auto lost. The ganks might even not work because it's 2v1. Enemy top's probably got flash. Like whatever. There's so many reasons not to call. So just suck it up, play the weak side, drop the ego. You know, like it's not, as you said, you're not in the driver's seat anymore. Just like let it go. No,
even if you get the kill, a lot of the time you're still going to lose the 1v1.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Right? So that's
you're
the
1
most
and 3
important
and they're 3 and 1, you know? Like,
yeah, if you're a 1 and 3 Riven into like, you know, a Garen that's 3 and 1, even if you get one kill, the lane's probably done anyway. One kill, unless it's a huge shutdown, is not going to change that lane. Like, you're going to die and lose pressure in anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
like, it's better that your jungler just goes bot side.
Yeah, and then I just want to quickly dive back into what Javine said. So where he can't even get back into his own jungle, what are some positive plays? It's not plays, just fundamentals. Have a bit of foresight. So how are we going to get to the bottom side of our jungle to go and farm? Let's get some blue trinkets on the map. Let's get some pinks. Let's get some vision down so it forces the enemy to make a mistake when they're going for invades, all that kind of thing. Obviously, sweeping vision. I'm going to assume that he's talking about a support here because he can't even get into his own, or maybe he's a jungle player, whatever. Just doing those kind of like safe plays, I guess, and not like face checking is a mistake. Just minimizing your mistakes. Anything, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, it's important to note though, like, there are games that you mentioned before, like, that look like a 30% loss. Like, say you're a top laner and then you're down, right? Or you're a bot lane and then say you're playing support bard and you just lost the 2v2, your top's also counted and getting shit stomped, and your mid, like, everywhere's losing. Those are games where you don't want to lose gracefully because nothing's going to happen. In those situations where everyone is losing and there isn't an obvious win con, then you've got to step up and maybe try and make a desperate play. So rather than rolling over and dying, maybe make a creative roam topside or just take a shitty reset, let your AD carry go down 2 waves to try and maybe get something done mid.
Yep.
You know, that's something to consider.
Yeah, so the thing we take away from that is probably making like the game's already over. Might as well do like a flash play. Might as well go for a flash ult. Might as well go for it. You know, like just see what happens. Like, yeah, game's lost already, so go for something crazy. No, I like that. Cool. And last question from Throwaway Boy 117. When a lane opponent picks an off-meta pick or uncommon pick, how do you not into it? Matchup knowledge is very important, and I often find myself getting frustrated during games where the enemy picks something uncommon, as I feel I haven't really learned much in terms of the matchup because I don't see it that often, and I won't likely see it again.
Yeah, so, okay, I would say 2 things. I think number 1, use the loading screen to try and visualize. Like, let's say you don't verse Pyke mid at all.
Yeah.
Or let's say you don't verse Garen mid at all. Like, in the loading screen, rather than checking your shitty little Porofess or whatever it might be, try and visualize what's a trade going to be like? Like, what are they going to do level 1? Like, literally, what are they going to level up? What are they going to skill? What does the interaction look like with your character? And a lot of the time, this can save your ass. I would also say that, number 2, be on the safe side. Like, just be like I'd be just way more cautious. It's like, I'm gonna proceed with caution rather than doing my normal strategy in you know, or sending at level 1. Let's just poke and prod from a distance and let's just kind of see and observe and see what they do, and then we can, you know, make the appropriate adjustment.
Yeah, a little bit of wiggle room there. Even probably focusing on your farm and just, again, as you said, like assessing the lane, seeing what they're trying to accomplish or seeing their windows. I think just to dive into point 1, what I used to do, and I don't actually do that much anymore, but as a one trick, I don't have a lot of outside, all I see is what champions do on the map, right? I don't know their finer details. So for example, what I used to do, I don't know anymore. I don't know why I don't do it anymore, but I would jump into just Google and Google their abilities. So some champions, for example, like let's say Wukong Q, shreds your armor. And obviously if he hits you with Q, don't trade. That's it. Just don't trade. You're going to lose because you're playing to the condition of the champion. He's shredded your armor already. He's going to E into you, auto you to death. You're already at a debuff. You're just going to lose. If you don't read into those sort of things, you mightn't even know he does that. And you might go for a trade after he's Q'd. You might, oh, Q's down, I'll go trade. When it's a mistake. Just things like that. Like maybe even look into those little niche things. Like, hit me with this, I'll just wait till it wears off. Or, you know, I've walked into this, just back up for a little bit. Because they're where those little, you'll be like, oh my God, that did so much damage. And it's because of like those little dots accumulating or those stacks accumulating, or you had no armor, something like that. Like that's what I would do, is just research the abilities probably before I go into it. Personally anyway, yeah. I think that actually wraps us up, honestly. I've learned a lot. I've had a really, really good chat. It was lovely to meet you. As I said before, we've played on the Rift before, but I've never actually spoken to you in person before. It was a very insightful interview. I absolutely loved having you on the channel. Would you like to throw anything out to the following there, or?
I mean, check out my YouTube if you haven't already. Coach Curtis. I also have a podcast called Broken by Concept. Go deeper on these sorts of things. And I have another second YouTube channel called Midlane Academy, which has some of my coaching VODs. So if you're interested, be sure to subscribe to those.
Yeah, perfect. I'm gonna chuck everything to do with Coach Curtis down the bottom in the description below. Thank you so much, Curtis, for showing your insight today. Problem. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on. Again, guys, sub to Curtis, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks again.
Cheers.